Hello and welcome. Happy to talk to you guys, if only through Zoom. And I am happy to talk about the story of the Cross Florida Barge Canal, which at some level is fairly well known in North Florida, probably not nearly as well known in South Florida. So hopefully this will allow you guys to understand why it is among the most important political and environmental stories of 20th century Florida. And much of this comes from my book, which I co-wrote with David Tegeder, who teaches at Santa Fe College here in Gainesville, called Ditch of Dreams, the Cross Florida Barge Canal and the Struggle for Florida's Future. And at some level, it is about a struggle for Florida's future. It's about whether Florida's future will be concerned about economic growth and development, or whether it will be concerned about environmental protection and ecological saving, and whether those two seemingly disparate possibilities can actually work together. So this is the story about a canal that was started twice and stopped twice. Once in the 1930s as a ship canal, a straight ditch across the state, and once as a barge canal with the building of locks and dams. Neither of those were completed. It is about a third of it is finished. It is presently not used pretty much at all, but the land that was going to be used for the canal is now part of the longest linear state park in Florida called the Marjorie Carr Cross Florida Greenway. So this is a story about irony, the irony that this industrial waterway, assumed to bring economic prosperity to a region of the state which is pretty much economically backward, is now turned into one of the jewels of the Florida State Park system. So that's what we will talk about today. It's a story about economic progress and opposition to that progress. It's a story about political opportunism. It's a story about the growth of liberalism and what liberalism means in the 1930s and what liberalism means in the 1960s and 70s. And it's a story about citizen activism. It's a story about how a ragtag group of citizens, mostly from Gainesville, stopped a plan which basically everyone thought was going to go through, supported by governors, supported by the state legislature, supported by Florida cities, supported by the federal government, supported by the Army Corps of Engineers, and how it was stopped and why it was stopped. So this is kind of what it looks like today from Google Maps. This is the canal transferring across the state. Both lines, both iterations of the canal from the 1930s and the 1960s-70s go across this using existing rivers, the Withlacoochee here on the west side, the Ocklawaha and the St. John's on the east side, and this transecting of the Florida Peninsula here across the Central Florida Ridge. And this is what it looks like on the west side, looking from the lock on the west side, in an area of the canal that was completed that is not used at all today. So you can stand on this lock called Inglis Lock and look westward toward the Gulf of Mexico and see this cut into the land, and it's not used for anything today. So this is it on the eastern side. This is State Road 19 in the foreground, crossing the canal, which leads from the St. John's River to this body of water in the background, which is called, depending on what you think about it, Rodman Reservoir, Lake Ocklawaha, the impoundment, Rodman Pool. This was established for the canal to provide water for the canal when it was going to go through. It is still there on the Ocklawaha River, and this part of the canal is still used today, not for industrial uses, but by pleasure craft, mostly large bass boats, which use Lake Ocklawaha / Rodman Reservoir for bass fishing. But this story starts much earlier. It starts in the 19th century with the Ocklawaha River. And the Ocklawaha River is the center of tourism in the 19th century in Florida. Sorry, it's not Palm Beach. It's not Miami. It's not Disney World. It's the Ocklawaha River. And the And the Ocklawaha River is the center of Florida tourism because of its subtropical natural beauty. It is a tributary of the St. Johns. It flows northward from east central Florida along the western edge of Marion County, and then turns eastward towards the St. Johns River, just south of Palatka. Its major tributary is the Silver River, which is fed by Silver Springs. So in the late 19th century, tourists come down to Florida to see the natural beauty, to enjoy this subtropical scenery of a canopied river.
Over here.
Please mute, thank you, of a canopied river, which is from the beauty of Silver Springs. So wealthy northern tourists come down to Florida from the 1860s into the 1920s to see a natural beauty that they cannot see in the north. And they not only see the springs, they see the river itself. So the river is part of the experience. And of course, in order to do that, they have to be associated with wealthy northern entrepreneurs like Hubbard Hart. And Hubbard Hart is the man who develops the tourism steamboat industry on the Ocklawaha, on the St. Johns, on the Silver. So people come from New York, they come from Philadelphia, they come from Baltimore by steamboat to Jacksonville. They get off that steamboat in Jacksonville. They take another steamer down the St. Johns River to Palatka, which in the 19th century is an important tourist hub. That's hard to believe if you know anything about Palatka today. And then they get off that boat and they go on to Hubbard Hart's Heartline, which is located in Palatka, which has a day-and-a-half journey down the Ocklawaha and then down to Silver Springs so you can see the beauty of the springs themselves. The Hart's people invent the glass bottom boat in 1879 so that people can glide over the springs, look down through the bottom of the boat and see the beauty of the water, 60, 70, 80 feet deep, clear, amazing stuff. So people are willing to pay this, and they are willing also to come here only during the wintertime, because we all know without air conditioning, you don't want to be in Florida in the summertime. So starting around Thanksgiving, ending around this time, that's the tourist season on the Heartline. So the Heartline is associated with river traffic, with traveling on this beautiful river. And it gets dark early in Florida in the wintertime, in north central Florida. So what do? Well, there's no internet, right? There's no television. So we have entertainment at night on the river. We light up cauldrons of pitch pine on the top of the boat, cauldrons of pitch pine on the side, and they illuminate the water, they illuminate the overhanging foliage and provide what's called a fairyland. And people come from all over and write back and say, this is gorgeous, this is amazing, this is so different than anything that we've ever seen. And people like Harriet Beecher Stowe, who travels on the river in the 1870s and writes back up north and tells people, you have to come here. You have to come here. It's amazing stuff. And during the day, what they see are alligators, lots of alligators. When Stowe writes in the 1870s, she says, there are thousands of alligators on this river, alligators so numerous that you can basically walk across the river on their heads. And, you know, when you're coming from the north, alligators are this amazing mythical creature that exists somewhere, but not in the United States. So they are amazed to see these creatures. And this is an advertisement lithograph. You can see the alligator has prominence in this thing, as prominent as the boat itself, right? And these boats are specially designed for the twisty, turny river that is the Ocklawaha. The paddle wheel is encased in the stern so it doesn't get hit by the side, as boats often knock against the side as they go. This is a boat on a competitor's line called the Lucas line, and certainly throughout the late 19th into the early 20th century, there are competitors for Hart's line. And within 2 or 3 years, Hart manages to drive them out of business and buy their boats. So this picture was taken in 1903. By 1905, the Lucas line has gone out of business, and the Metamora is now, by 1905, has become part of Hart's line itself. So these are specially designed boats, smaller, and they're part of Hart's economic entrepreneurship. Hart has an orange grove, one of the first commercial groves in the state of Florida, along the St. John's, where these boats stop and people buy oranges from Hart's groves. Hart also provides the first opportunity for ecotourism in Florida. And 19th century ecotourism is much different than 21st century ecotourism. Ecotourism in the 19th century is see the alligators, shoot the alligators, stuff the alligators, bring them home, mount them on your mantle, mount them in your club, and people are very excited about this. The problem is alligator numbers drop precipitously because of tourism. Right? So Harry Beecher Stowe in the 1880s writes, now there are hundreds of alligators, not thousands. So already we're reshaping this river somewhat dramatically in the late 19th century. But Hart, as an entrepreneur, has other opportunities to utilize the river itself. And one of them is the fact that these boats provide entry into interior Florida, into those places that exist along the river valley, in the Ocklawaha River Valley Basin. Places that are pretty much cut off from outside world, except for their connection by Hart's steamboats. So Hart's boats provide entry for stuff that is manufactured or stuff that is grown in interior Florida that is shipped out on Hart's boats, stuff that is brought in so that these people can have a stove, so that these people can have a dresser. And you might be in this nice appointed stateroom on this boat, and next to you might be a bale of cotton. Next to you might be something imported from the Sears catalog. So all this is done on Hart's boat on this river. And also Hart's other main economic use of the river is the forest itself. First growth cypress forest, an incredibly strong and durable wood. It is a key factor in building in the late 19th century. So Hart uses crews of mostly newly freed slaves, and into the 19th century, late 19th century, these freedmen cut down these gigantic cypress trees. And how do they get them out? They ship them by log raft down the Ocklawaha, which in Florida means actually up because it flows north, and then down the St. John's to Palatka, which by 1919 has the largest cypress mill in the world, the E.O. Wilson cypress mill. And most of that wood comes from the Ocklawaha River Valley. So the tourism angle is changing the river at some point. By the 1920s, however, tourism has changed itself. People are coming in here by road, people are coming in here by rail, and they no longer have any need for the steamboat. Hart's Line goes bankrupt by 1919. Silver Springs is able to be accessed by road from Ocala rather than by river from Palatka. And at some level, the economic interests on the river go to sleep. The river becomes back to kind of where it was before Hart's entrepreneurial opportunities. And this is the river that will be associated with building the canal in the 1930s. On the other side of Florida is another river that will be used for both iterations of the canal. This is the Withlacoochee, which flows also from central Florida, but flows westward into the Gulf of Mexico. And this river is much more utilized by economic interests in the 19th century than the Ocklawaha on the east. And this is utilized mostly by phosphate miners. By the late 19th century, by 1890 or so, phosphate mining has become big business in Florida. And phosphate is mined for A, gunpowder, but mostly B, for fertilizer, fueling the first green revolution. And so it is picked out of the Withlacoochee Valley by pick and shovel, by hardened men who oftentimes are convicts leased to private corporations, utilizing pick and shovel at first, destroying the land, leaving scars on it, destroying the river valley, and then later by giant dredges, which dig the phosphate out of the river valley. Then shipped by both barge and rail to the coastline, where they are loaded into boats and sent not only all over the United States, but all over the world as well. To the point that Port Ingles, which is a place that doesn't even exist today, it is one of Florida's ghost towns, becomes the largest port on the Gulf of Mexico between Tampa and Pensacola, as 20 to 30 ships a day line up there to ship out phosphate from the Withlacoochee River Valley to ports all over the world. And this is, again, Port Ingles, and you can see here on the map, number 9 is the Customs House, which is basically just today a ruin. And to have a customs house, it tells you that this is an incredibly important, vibrant port, where the United States has customs agents designed to fill out all the paperwork necessary to ship stuff in, but mostly to ship stuff out. And I have been to visit this island at the mouth of the Withlacoochee. It is in imminent danger of being overrun by the higher level sea at the moment. So within 20 years, this will not exist at all. So interesting stuff. But while both of these rivers are at some level being exploited in the 19th century, other Florida entrepreneurs, other Florida individuals wanting economic opportunity see these rivers as the centerpiece of a canal, a place to cut across the state, to save 3.5 days of ships from going around the peninsula of Florida and cutting them across, and also to prevent them from foundering on the reefs of the Florida reefs around between the Florida Keys and what is now Miami-Dade County, and also to prevent them from being taken, particularly in the 19th century, by those people that Westerners call wreckers, euphemistically. I would probably call them pirates. And so this is going to prevent that from happening. Let's cut across the state. And throughout much of the 19th century, the United States Army Corps of Engineers.
Recording in progress.
Please mute. Please mute.
Please mute.
The Army Corps of Engineers. The Army Corps of Engineers will conduct dozens of surveys throughout the state of Florida, looking for the best place where we can cut a canal across the state of Florida, from the St. Mary's River on the north to the Great Lake, Okeechobee in the south, looking for these ways. And certainly, we can see Ship Canal brought there, these surveys by the Army Corps of Engineers. And the Army Corps of Engineers makes these surveys from the 1820s into the early part of the 20th century, dozens of them. And every time they make this survey, they said, a ship canal is doable, but it's impracticable, which is this wonderful 19th century term, right? That means it will cost an exorbitant amount of money, and it will not bring back nearly the return that it costs to build it. So therefore, we can build it if you tell us to, but you shouldn't, right? So throughout much of the 19th century and into the early 20th century, boosters of a canal are pushing for this. The Army Corps of Engineers is pushing for it as well, but nothing is getting done. Even with the development of the Panama Canal in 1904, the assumption is it's not going to get done. And then we have the Great Depression, 1929. Right, 25% of Florida workers are unemployed. Now we have another reason to build the canal. It can be a make-work project that we can put hundreds, thousands of workers to work digging this canal and pumping money into Florida. So in 1935, President Roosevelt authorizes the building of a ship canal across Florida along a route that the Army Corps of Engineers, who are wonderful at giving bureaucratic names to places, this is called Route 13B. It's going to start in Yankeetown on the West Coast. It's going to use the Withlacoochee. It's going to cross the state south of Ocala. It's going to use the Ocklawaha. It's going to use the St. John's. It's going to enter into the Atlantic Ocean at Jacksonville. We're going to not only dig the canal, we're going to widen and dredge all these rivers, and we're going to dig deep into the Gulf of Mexico and deep into the Atlantic as well. It's going to be a ship canal, which means it's going to be 40 feet deep and it's going to be over 200 feet wide. And this is what it's going to look like. And opponents already have said, well, if we do this, we're dividing Florida in half and everything south of there is going to drift away. Right? So already people are raising some questions about what this canal might or might not be. Right? And FDR by 1935 has allocated $5 million out of his executive budget, New Deal budget, to start the canal and pay these workers. And the assumption is this will be a down payment on what's going to happen. So until it's completed, every year they will dump more and more money into building this canal. And it's going to be a ship canal, so ships can go from the Atlantic across the state to the Gulf without having to transfer into smaller barges. Right? And so this is what it's going to look like, right? These pictures are wonderful. And it's going to make Ocala the busiest inland port in the United States. Assumptions are that one ship an hour will be passing through Ocala, either going westward to the Gulf or eastward to the Atlantic. And people are excited. People are excited because it's jobs, it's economic growth, it's development. And they're excited when in September of 1935, Camp Roosevelt opens south of Ocala, and 3,500 men descend on this place looking for work to be paid for by the government and subcontractors who are going to work with the Army Corps of Engineers to build this place. So Camp Roosevelt becomes this place that is where workers are going to live, where the plans are going to be laid. And this is an example of a house at Camp Roosevelt, still in use today. So if you drive down Highway 441 south of Ocala, you can turn off there and you can still see some of the houses that are left from this failed canal, right? Really interesting stuff. And these guys get to work immediately, clearing the land. They're going to clear at least a half a mile across at some places, up to a mile across in other places. And the work is designed to be inefficient. Mules and men doing much of the digging, because that way we can put more men to work, right? If we have one man driving a bulldozer, that puts one man to work. If we have 6 men with mules doing the same amount of work, that puts 6 men to work. So we can design this to be inefficient as we can. But immediately we begin to change the landscape, to dig the ditch, to build it, right? And certainly, you know, we see what's happening here. This is within 4 months of what's happened. And you can see how different this Florida looks than the Florida we saw earlier with Hubbard Hart's ships and Heartline going up and down the Ocklawaha River. And that is all unnatural landscape in the background. That is spoil land from where we're going to dig the canal. So people seem to be happy. Right? It seems to be going well. We're going to dig this canal. We're going to put people to work. We're going to make North Florida economically viable again. And then we have issues with labor. And this is just this wonderful article found in the New York Times that workers should be just happy to have a job, right? It's a depression, just glad to be working. Well, certainly contractors and subcontractors understand that. And so they are cheating workers on their pay. They are working them longer hours than they're supposed to. And the working conditions are pretty onerous. So in those situations, workers think about union organizing. And they bring down this guy named George Timmerman, who is a union organizer. And Timmerman is going to try to get workers on the canal to unionize, to get better working conditions, to get shorter hours, to get better pay. Well, people in Ocala don't like this. And Timmerman is found in the woods, as you can see, nailed to a cross, lips sewn shut, still alive. A message given to union organizers: don't come here. Right? Timmerman is cut loose from the cross. Lips are unsewn. Unbelievably, he's not seriously hurt. And he disappears from the record. Dave Tegeder and I, Dave, who wrote the book with me, tried to find out what happened to this guy after this. He don't want to be found. He's the hell out of Florida. And with this, workers decide, we don't need a union. these guys play hardball, right? These guys play hardball. If that's what they're going to do to this guy, what do they do for us? So labor organization on the canal kind of stops with this Timmerman story. But the other side of this is this looks bad for Florida. In a state in which lynching takes place, in a state in which labor violence is problematic, to have a labor organizer nailed to a cross doesn't look good for the state. So in Ocala, same days, very different headlines. Believe cross case is a fake. That Timmerman is not a union organizer. That Timmerman is a carnival barker who comes down to Florida looking to drum up business for his carnival. And he nails himself to a cross and puts himself in the woods so that people can find him, and that will generate interest in his carnival. Now, I'll leave it to you to decide which is the more appropriate and true story. But whatever the story is, labor organization is gone after Timmerman's gone. And it appears that Florida is well on its way to having its canal built. But canal opponents begin to raise significant questions about the efficacy of this thing. First of all, it's extraordinarily expensive. Is it going to be worth it to build this canal? But most importantly, it's about how deep the canal goes. If it goes 40 feet deep, it's going to dig into the Floridan aquifer, the chief source of fresh water for the state of Florida. And if that's the case, it will be problematic for people's drinking water, and especially for agricultural interests who are utilizing that water to irrigate their crops. And understand that in 1935, the largest industry in Florida is not tourism, it's still agriculture. And agricultural interests, people who work in citrus and also in winter vegetables, begin to raise questions about the need for this canal. Do we need it? Is it too expensive? Is it going to destroy Florida's environment? And they begin to ask questions of their congressmen, of their senators, of their governor, and write letters to Roosevelt. And Roosevelt is, at some level, a politician. Maybe a Democrat, maybe the president, but he's a politician, right? And a very good politician. And so as a good politician, he is attuned to the needs, wants, and desires of constituents. And in here, the constituents that he's listening to are Florida constituents. And Florida constituents appear to be rather divided now about the canal. He thought everybody in Florida was all for it. He was putting money in it. Now he's not so sure. So he comes up with a solution. The next iteration of money for the canal will not come out of my executive budget. It'll come out of Congress's budget. And they can vote to pay for it or not. And the canal is moving onwards. These are bridge stanchions for the Dixie Highway, which is going to go over the canal just south of Ocala. So these are in the process of being built. These are in the process of having the scaffolding around it when Roosevelt puts this stuff in Congress's lap and says, it's up to you. And in the summer of 1936, Congress votes on the canal and votes by one vote to not fund it anymore. So started, these stanchions built, stuff like this completed, and done. The men who were working on the canal are out of work again. The bulldozers out of work, have to go. So this is what's left of this canal. Maybe about 20% done, right? And those people who wanted the canal are profoundly upset. Not only did we started it and then stopped it. So we now are pretty angry, probably angrier than we would have been if it didn't start it in the first place, because they started it, left this, and then just went away. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to try to find new rationales for building this canal that people can't complain about. So the first thing they do is they talk with the Army Corps of Engineers and say, let's figure out another way to build this canal. And so the Army Corps of Engineers, using the same route, that wonderfully named 13B, is going to say, okay, we're not going to make it 40 feet deep. We're going to make it 12 feet deep. And that means it won't dig into the aquifer, and all the agricultural interests who are complaining have no reason to complain. And as 12 feet deep, we're going to have it as a series of locks and dams so that it will raise and lower to the level of Florida's sea level, above sea level, which is at its highest point along that place where it's going to cut between the two rivers, right? And if that's the case, it's going to be a barge canal. So we're going to re-examine this thing and try to pass it as a now barge canal instead of a ship canal. So we've solved that problem, but we've got another wonderful rationale for building. Anytime you want to build something, like the interstate highway system, you say it's for national defense. So the assumption is the Cross Florida Barge Canal, the newly named Cross Florida Barge Canal, is going to be for national defense. So what we have is much of America's oil reserves come from the oil fields of Oklahoma and Texas. Can't do much with this oil until it's refined, and many of the refineries in America are located in this industrial part of New Jersey. So how do we get that crude oil from Texas and Oklahoma to New Jersey? Well, we ship it by tanker through the Gulf of Mexico, around the tip of Florida, up the Atlantic Gulf Coast to New Jersey, making those ships vulnerable to enemy submarines. Okay, but if we put them in a canal, we connect the canal to interstate, to intercoastal waterways. It can go protected along the Gulf Coast, through the canal, and up the intercoastal waterway, all the way in the interior, all the way to New Jersey. And at some level, this is an esoteric argument, a theoretical argument, until the United States enters World War II in December of 1941, and in April of 1942, their vision comes true. An oil tanker, the SS Gulf America, carrying crude oil from the Texas oil fields to New Jersey, is sunk off the coast of Jacksonville Beach by a German U-boat, the 123, right? And the 123 torpedoes the Gulf of America. 19 American sailors are killed. 500,000 gallons of crude oil is dumped into the Atlantic Ocean. And certainly, at some point, this tells us that maybe America's oil needs are at risk. And so within 3 months, Congress votes to authorize the building of the newly named Cross Florida Barge Canal. And supporters are ecstatic. This is from Bert Dosh from Ocala, getting a letter from Walter Coachman from Jacksonville, the two major cities, congratulating each other on the fact that the canal has now been authorized. But its authorization is one thing. The second thing is they have to allocate funding. And in the midst of World War II, funding is not allocated because this is low on the totem pole of funding needs for war. We need to fund tanks. We need to fund the building of aircraft. We need to we need to push for the funding of military equipment. So the canal doesn't get built. It's authorized. All it needs is allocation of funding, but that doesn't happen. The war's over and that national defense angle is gone. So boosters, supporters of the canal, have to find some other reason to have Congress say, let's build it. And they come up with this thing that Dave Tegeder and I have called the spaghettiization of Florida. Let's build all these canals across the state, around the state, that will make Florida the centerpiece of waterborne commerce in the United States. And the centerpiece of that centerpiece will be what they call the missing link, the Cross Florida Barge Canal. So the Barge Canal is going to be the centerpiece of this new waterborne commerce that's going to be associated with Florida. And certainly it's going to be associated with the Army Corps of Engineers. And the Army Corps of Engineers, this is just a great political cartoon. Army Corps of Engineers in the late 1940s into the 1960s makes Florida its playground. The Central and South Florida Flood Control District allows people to live basically on the coast in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County. They reshape the drainage of the Everglades. And in the process, they're going to try to reshape North Central Florida too with the canal. But throughout the 1950s, nothing happens. Every year, Florida congressmen push for this, and every year they are shut down. Until 1963, when powerful figures in both Tallahassee and Washington convince Congress and the president to finally allocate more funding. And in November of 1963, not a very nice time period for the United States, because it's when President Kennedy is assassinated, Congress finally allocates funding to build the Cross Florida Barge Canal. This is Governor Hayden Burns in the middle, who pushes for this desperately, because guess what? He's from Ocala. And the man with the cigarette is a man in John Kennedy's wedding. So he's a very close friend of the president. That's Florida Senator and UF graduate George Smathers. And he gets Kennedy's ear, right? And the guy in profile, that's Bob Sykes, the he-coon, the man who brings all this money into West Florida, the Panhandle, Panama City, Pensacola, for military expenditures. Very conservative guy, but he is certainly willing to bring federal dollars into the state. These three guys convince everybody to build the canal, and now it's going to be built, right? And it's going to be built even though Kennedy's assassinated. And here we have a surprise package from Washington, from Johnson's budget now, right? $4 million. And we see the big construction equipment. It's a donkey because it's brought to Florida by the Democratic Party. So we're going to build this thing now. Everybody's all excited. So in February of 1964, a huge groundbreaking ceremony is going to be held just south of Palatka on the St. Johns River, where we're going to start the canal to connect it to the Ocklawaha, right? This place called Roadheaver Boys Ranch. And, you know, big doings in Palatka. 10,000 people show up to watch the president. School is out for the day. I've interviewed people who were in the Palatka High School marching band who played for the president. I mean, you know, who visits Palatka? Well, I mean, the president of the United States. Pretty amazing, right? This is building the dais where they're going to be. And you know, here's Johnson speaking. You can see all the Florida representatives and state legislatures there. You can see Lady Bird Johnson and the governor. So we have all the people from the Army Corps of Engineers. I mean, it's an amazing place. And you can see all the people here. It's a cold day in North Florida, rainy and cold. Untypical of Florida, right? And so, you know, the papers from Ocala and Palatka talk about how important this is. Dirt turned on the Barge Canal. You know, FDR pressed the button in 35, connecting what LBJ does in 64 to what FDR did in 1935 for the ship canal, right? So this is the Ocala, this is the Palatka paper, you know, Johnson, the rains came, but so did President Johnson. And the great story about that picture of the exploding land when Johnson presses the button and the dynamite blows this up is the Army Corps figures out that dirt doesn't make this grand explosion. That just kind of makes a loud noise. So they truck in tons of peat moss so that when Johnson pushes the button and the dynamite explodes, the peat moss goes off in this amazing display. And everybody goes, oh, pretty crazy. So people are excited. You know, once again, political cartoons tell the story of the canal. Johnson and Bryant, the governor and the president, Democrats, digging the canal, getting very excited, right? And people are excited because it means economic growth. It means economic development. It means business and industry coming to Florida. Welcome, Cross Florida Barge Canal. And people start seeing how quickly this is going to be built. Not inefficient like the first one. You know, we're going to use the latest machinery to dig stuff out and get this thing finished. The high tide of American liberalism, which at this point is about big money projects, you know, things that we can leave as legacies. So, my gosh, we're going to build this thing. Until this woman, Marjorie Carr, comes along. She is a faculty wife, not a faculty spouse, because there are no faculty men who have wives along there. All the faculty is male, so she's a faculty spouse. She is married to Archie Carr, very famous Florida scientist whose office actually was in the building from which I am speaking right now. At this point, it was called Science Hall. Today, it's called Keene Flint Hall on campus. And I hope that my office actually was Archie's office. And Archie Carr is very famous for being the man who discovered that sea turtles go back to the same beach year after year to breed. So he's an incredibly famous scientist. His wife may be a better scientist, but she's not permitted in the male-only world of science in the mid-20th century to have a good position. graduate of FSCW, Florida State College for Women, now FSU, Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Florida State, gets a master's degree in wildlife biology from UF. You can get a master's if you're a woman and you go in the summer. And she gets her calling not from her work, because she's not doing any work, technical work, but from protecting North Central Florida from the predations of development. She helps protect land on the University of Florida campus. She helps protect Paynes Prairie, this amazing area just south of Gainesville that you can see from I-75. But her high calling comes when she is going to save the Ocklawaha River from the building of the Cross Florida Barge Canal. So she takes it upon herself, along with other people in Gainesville, to protect the river and stop the canal from being built. And even before it is started, as the Army Corps of Engineers talking about having it built, in 1962, they have a meeting at the P.K. Young, which is the lab school of the University of Florida, at the P.K. Young Auditorium, about the river and what's going to happen. So Army Corps of Engineer guys go to this public meeting, and they figure it's just going to be a rubber stamp. People are going to say, this is wonderful. They are blindsided by the scientific and nature-oriented arguments of Marjorie Carr at this meeting, and other people from the University of Florida as well. And so the fight is on. And she raises questions about the destruction of people's health, conservation issues about what's going to happen to the land, and also whether this thing is just going to be too damn expensive. And she uses scientific doctrine from faculty members at UF, like David Anthony in biochemistry, like Paul Roberts in economics, to make the case that the canal is, in this great term, a boondoggle, something that is not worth building. And she gets her best help from the Corps itself. Another example of irony. The Army Corps of Engineers has this specially designed machine called the crusher crawler. And this machine is designed to be amphibious and to crush forests at the rate of 1 acre per hour, quickly, efficiently. And it's going to crush these forests in the valley of the Ocklawaha, and particularly in this area that's going to be Rodman Reservoir eventually. And when we saw the picture previously of what the Ocklawaha River looked like with Hubbard Hart in the late 19th century, this is what it looks like after the crusher has done its work. It looks like Hades, right? It looks horrible. And Carr brings people out to the river and says, this is what they are doing to my river. This is what they're doing to our river. We have got to get them to stop. And not only is it look like this wasteland, by 1968, when the area cleared by the crusher is flooded over for what will become the Lake Ocklawaha Rodman Reservoir behind the dam, as the water comes up, all those trees that were crushed by the crusher that are down on the bottom begin to pop up. And so we have significant numbers of trees popping up all over the reservoir. And the Army Corps of Engineers has to harvest them, put them into piles. And then, because it is not efficient to get them out of there, because we're still hard to get things in and out, what do they do with them? They burn them. And so Carr has all the ammunition she needs. Here they are. What a waste. What a waste. How horrible this is. And so she is juxtaposed with her vision of Florida's future against the vision of the Army Corps of Engineers and boosters from Ocala and Jacksonville, who say, few trees, it's okay. It's going to be economic growth. And so canal construction continues. This is construction of the first lock of 5. This is a lock on the east side that will be called St. John's Lock and eventually renamed Buckman Lock after Henry Buckman of Jacksonville, who in the legislature pushed the canal to be completed. And while this is being built, the Army Corps of Engineers publishes its 1968 yearbook nationwide. And this is on the cover of this nationwide yearbook. This is the first mile of the canal off of the St. Johns River. And this is where we're going. And the title above this is just one word: progress, with a particular punctuation mark, an exclamation point. Carr sees this picture and says, this is it. She takes the picture, uses the same word, progress, just changes the punctuation mark from an exclamation point to a question mark. This is progress. This is what we want our state to look like. And they use this picture too. This picture is used mostly by Bill Partington, who leaves his job at Florida Audubon to help Marjorie Carr stop the canal, and says, this is what they're doing to our state, right? And building continues. By September of 1968, the dam across the Ocklawaha is completed, called Rodman Dam, from the area in Putnam County where this is located. And the area behind the dam is flooded, and it will be called Rodman Reservoir, Lake Ocklawaha, Rodman Pool, whatever you want to call it. So it appears things are moving towards completion. All right, we've got Rodman Dam built. We've got that first lock built. We're going to build more locks, more dams. We're going to cut more land. Everything is happening. This is what this area looks like. This is the area around Rodman Dam. This is Buckman Lock, which we saw being built. This is that first mile off the St. Johns River, now completed. This is the path of the Ocklawaha flowing north from Central Florida, turning eastward towards Palatka. This is the original course of the river here. This is the dam that is built across the Ocklawaha with its attendant Rodman Reservoir. You can see now today, this picture was taken in 2008. This is exactly what it looks like today. The vast majority of water flows this way through the canal cut. About 25% of it flows through the original flow of the river. And if you take this up, you can't get past the dam. Okay, so that's what it looks like. And by 1969, Carr begins to get some traction. It's a propitious moment for the environmental movement. Today, this would be an oxymoron if we would say bipartisan environmentalism, but that's what this is. This is Governor Claude Kirk giving Marjorie Carr an environmental award. That's Archie in the background. Claude Kirk is a Republican, and telling her how wonderful it is that she's trying to stop the canal, using it for political fodder against the Democrats. It's a time period of the oil spill in California off of Santa Barbara. It's a time period in which the Cuyahoga River in Ohio is on fire. And so people look around and say, we've got to do something. And one place they can do something is to stop the cross-Florida Barge Canal. And Carr is a tireless advocate and uses three avenues to stop the canal. The first thing she uses is science. Science, and she says, just give them the facts, they'll have to believe. Science that is developed by professors at the university, scientists and economists who study the river and tell the world just how destructive this canal will be to the ecosystem of the Ocklawaha River, right? And this is among the first environmental impact statements, saying that the cost of the canal cannot be measured without the costs to the destruction of the river. That's what this environmental impact statement does, right? So that's one thing, science. The second thing she does is publicity. And she is amazing at getting this story out around the nation. She even gets an article published in, of all places, Reader's Digest, called Rape on the Ocklawaha. And this rape is not about young college students who have camped there. It's about the river itself being destroyed. So she's got publicity, she's got science, and then she's got the legal aspect. She is going to sue to halt the canal. And she's going to sue the Army Corps of Engineers, and this suit is going to be in Washington, D.C., because that's where the Corps is headquartered. And the grounds of the suit are going to be that this is going to destroy a natural river, a unique natural river that can't be replaced. So if the canal goes through there, we will lose this river. So this river then is important, not as a water source, not as some place that provides irrigation or drinking water. It's important because it's a river, a natural river which needs to be protected. So very different from the reasons in the 1930s. That at some level is about conservation. This is about preservation. So in the summer of 1969, Carr and her newly named organization, Florida Defenders of the Environment, FDE, sue the Army Corps of Engineers in court. And it takes about a year and a half to wind its way through the court. But by January of 1971, a federal judge rules that the canal must be stopped. And President Nixon rules by executive order that the canal must be stopped. So the canal's building is now over. We've talked to workers who are on the canal, say Richard Nixon just pissed them off. I had to lose my job. I bought a case of beer, put it in the back of my pickup truck, and drove to New York where there were construction jobs. So people are angry. The canal is over for all intents and purposes, except for a few diehards in Jacksonville. Everybody realizes the canal will not be built. Okay, so that's the end of the story, but not really. Okay, not really. There are two codas to this story, one of which takes 20 years, the other of which is still going on. One coda is, what are we going to do here? Right? We're going to rebuild it. We're going to save it. So this is a great political cartoon. We've already invested gazillion dollars, and people ask how much did it cost. We're not sure, but we've already invested a lot of money. We should build it. But the key here is Florida says no, don't build it. Okay. And this speaks to itself. I love this. I'm not going to say a word. Right? Let's look at what somebody's saying in the chat. Okay. All right. Okay. So what's going to happen? Well, it takes 20 years for the Army Corps of Engineers to transfer the canal, its remnants, and its land that wasn't built to the state of Florida. An unbelievably contentious lawsuit in which the Army Corps of Engineers is both a defendant and a litigant in this thing. What do we do with this land? Do we turn it back over to the state? Do we turn it back over to the counties? Do we turn it back over to the landowners? Do we provide it for development? Finally, the canal is deauthorized in 1989, okay? It's taken from 1971, when it was stopped, to 1989, when it's finally deauthorized. So any time in that time period, it could have been started again, but it wasn't, okay? So in 1989, it's deauthorized, and it takes 3 years to figure out what to do with it. And it's going to be transferred to the state of Florida for the specific purpose of being a linear park. A linear park that will be called the Cross Florida Greenway. And this is important because supporters of the canal in Jacksonville now say, we don't want the canal. We understand it won't be built, but something positive has to come out of it. And that's going to be this linear park called the Cross Florida Greenway. So that's this long and contentious debate over that. But the debate over what to do with the dam that still stands on the river is much longer and even much more contentious, right? So the dam is still there, and Carr and her allies, even after Carr dies, are still trying to get rid of the dam so the Ocklawaha River can flow freely. So FDE, that's Carr's organization, Florida Defenders of the Environment, want to restore the river, get the dam down, and have the river flow freely. On the other side is this man. That's the dam itself. This is State Senator George Kirkpatrick from Gainesville, who takes it as his mission to keep the dam there at some level because he loves bass fishing. And apparently the canal is the reservoir is a great place to fish for bass. And so he is going to fight to ensure that the reservoir stays, even though the reason for the reservoir is gone. So this is a picture of the reservoir in the foreground, and the canal that goes out to it. This just ends right there. Okay, this is the spillway that just ends. So this is what you can see: the reservoir, Lake Ocklawaha, Rodman Reservoir, the impoundment behind it, right? And this is what Kirkpatrick wants. Rodman must be saved, meaning Rodman, the dam, and the reservoir. The canal may have been an ill-conceived project, but the reservoir which was built is great for fishing, a great habitat. And who wants to stop it? Those pointy-headed environmentalists led by Marjorie Carr in Gainesville. So they fight and they fight and they fight, even to the death. Carr dies in 1997. That year, the Florida legislature names the Greenway in her honor. So it is called the Marjorie Harris Carr Cross Florida Greenway, named after her. She has her funeral at First Presbyterian Church in downtown Gainesville, where mysteriously on the back of her hearse appears a bumper sticker. Free the Ocklawaha. She's talking from the grave. She's buried in Gainesville City Cemetery called Evergreen. 6 years later, George Kirkpatrick dies. Same church, same pastor. He too has bumper sticker on the back of his hearse. Save Rodman Reservoir. And he too is buried in Evergreen Cemetery. They're buried about 100 yards apart. And if you stand between them, you can feel the earth move as these two people still are fighting over what to do with the dam and the reservoir. And the same legislative session that names the Greenway after Carr names the dam after Kirkpatrick. So this dam is now called the George Kirkpatrick Dam, not Rodman Dam. And guess what? He's not even dead when they name it after him. So this battle is continuing. But the key to understanding what's going on here is that the reservoir is an artificial ecosystem that has to be managed by humans. So every 4 to 5 years, the level of the water has to be drawn down from its normal level of 22 feet above sea level to its level of 11 feet above sea level, so we can get rid of aquatic plants, allow the reservoir to breathe, as it were, right? And when that happens, when the drawdown happens, you can see what the crusher did. This is the remnants of what the crusher did. All these cypress trees cut off at exactly the same place by the crusher. And this is the drowned forest, the dead forest that is revealed when the drawdown goes down. And I have been out there. It is an eerie sight, one of the strangest sights in all of Florida. And it only can be seen once every 4 to 5 years. And as the reservoir goes down, as the water level goes down, we see springs appear, which are normally covered by the reservoir. Springs like Cannon Springs, how beautiful this thing is, how wonderful this thing would be for ecological tourism. But you can't see it except at particular times when the reservoir is drawn down. And so people like Gainesville artist Margaret Talbert goes out to Cannon Springs and paints what will be, in 2 months after she's finished there, underneath the waters of Rodman Reservoir. So part of this large battle over what to do to take down the dam. But people are still extraordinarily happy that the canal was stopped. This is from a restaurant along the Withlacoochee River. This is on the wall of the restaurant, right? So that people understand why this place is here. It wouldn't have been here if the canal had been built, right? Halted in 1971. Special thanks to Marjorie Carr. And the Greenway is the legacy, the lasting legacy of the canal. The irony that it's this 107-mile swath of green across the state of Florida. This is the land bridge that connects both sides of the Greenway over I-75. So if you're traveling north on 75 to Gainesville to go to a Gator football game with a new football coach, right? And the $85 million football edition, right? You're gonna go up there. You'll pass this. Wonder what the hell is this? This is the Greenway, okay? It's a crossing for pedestrians and hikers. It's a crossing for equestrians. It's for bikers, and it's also for animals, right? So it's this great thing. And it leads to this. This is a bike path hiking trail that leads to the Gulf of Mexico. So you can go out there and see the sun over the Gulf, an amazing thing. This would have been among the most industrial places in all of Florida. This is where ocean-going vessels would have unloaded their cargo to transfer them to barges to cross Florida on the Cross Florida Barge Canal. And now it's this amazing place that you can go and see the sunset. But the reservoir is still a bone of contention. In 2009, the legislature had a proposal before it to build a marina on the reservoir. If that's the case, the reservoir is going nowhere, right? The reservoir is going nowhere. This is finally defeated, right? This is finally defeated. 3 years later, FDE, Marjorie Carr's organization, she now is dead, but her organization continues, sues again to get the dam taken down. This suit is dismissed and the dam remains, right? This is 2012. 3 years later, assumptions are that the dam is going to finally come down. It has to do with mitigation. Mitigation has to do with the fact that if we screw up one part of an environmental ecosystem, we have to fix it by doing something to another part. So we want to build a 10-story building, right? And it's going to destroy some trees. We're going to build a building, but we're going to put some trees over here. Well, that's what's going to happen. We're going to fix Jacksonville's harbor by deepening it and dredging it so it can handle the new ships that can come through the newly expanded Panama Canal. That's going to foul up the St. Johns River. So what are we going to do? We're going to fix that by mitigating, by taking down the dam, because the Ocklawaha is part of the St. Johns ecosystem. So who's happy? Well, the Jacksonville Chamber of Commerce is happy. This pro-business group, they'll get the dredging and deepening of the harbor, and Jacksonville can be a big port. The St. Johns River Keeper are happy. They're a bunch of environmentalists who want to save and protect the St. Johns River, and they're going to get the dam down. So this looks like a done deal. We have people who won't even talk to each other, who hate each other. The Chamber and River Keepers, they're working together. But nobody talks to the people who live in Putnam County. When they hear this deal, they go crazy. Nobody asks us. It's our dam, it's our reservoir, and we ain't letting anybody from Jacksonville, whether they're from the Chamber or the River Keeper, touch it. And guess what? It's not down, right? So 2 years later, another lawsuit filed by FDE to assume that the dam should come down because it is destroying habitat for environmentally endangered species like the manatee. Right? Goes to court, and Forest Service, the federal government, seeks dismissal of the case. This is a year later, right? A year later, nothing's happening, right? This is the case itself. Defender's motion is denied. Case is dismissed. Not 2019. The case is dismissed. So that lawsuit is gone. Last fall, the St. Johns River Water Management District has an online survey. What do you want to see happen with Rodman Reservoir? 82% of the respondents say, take the dam down, right? That's in the fall of 2021. Guess what? The dam is still there and it shows no signs of being removed, right? And another lawsuit finally dismissed a month after this has happened. So, federal justices don't seem really interested in taking the dam down, right? And these are still there. These are the bridge stanchions at Santos, south of Ocala, off of US 441, that we saw being built, and with the scaffolding there. You saw how the land was barren, right? This is not first growth forest. This is land that had all been cleared for the 1930s iteration of the ship canal. These are still there. They are Ocala's version of Stonehenge, and amazing part of Florida. You go to the sheriff's substation on 441, you park your car there, you walk behind it. There's signage from the Greenway State Park, and you can go and see this. It's incredible what it looks like in the middle of the forest. This is what the canal looks like on the west side. Still there, still not used. This is what the Ocklawaha River looks like, and I took this picture on the river in 2019 before the COVID shutdown. This river at this place would have looked like this if not for the actions of Marjorie Carr and her fellow activists in the Florida Defenders of the Environment. So I will end here and answer any questions. Thank you.